Hello and welcome to Video Revealed. I'm Colin Smith. Let's have a look at some hidden keyboard shortcuts. All right, some people use shortcuts, some people don't. I use them all the time. Where are they? They're in the Edit menu on Windows, the Premiere Pro menu on Mac, keyboard shortcuts. And you can save, add, change to any of these shortcuts, and there's a bunch of keyboard shortcuts. If you click on something, you'll see what shortcuts are assigned to a specific key. And some are assigned, some aren't. The way that all software companies work is they create capability inside software, but they don't always put controls on those things. And sometimes they're kind of hidden and sometimes they're not documented and you find them. So the first one I'm going to show you is pretty simple, and it's holding the shift key down and hitting the space bar. Hitting the space bar is typically how you play anything in Premiere Pro. You hit the space bar and something plays. You hit the space bar again and it stops. If you add shift to that, I'm going to move my playhead all the way down to the end, hold shift and hit the space bar, and you'll notice that it played from the beginning. If you're like me, you might be hitting the home key or moving the playhead all the way back to the beginning and then hitting the space bar. It's just easier to file that one away wherever your playhead is on the timeline. If you don't have an in point set, shift space, boom, go back to the beginning and play. Because sometimes maybe you've been noodling around in an edit, 4 or 5 seconds away from the beginning, and you want to see how that works. If you do have an in point, so I'll hit the I key and move my playhead here and hit shift, you'll notice that it moved a little bit beyond the start in a pre-roll before it played. So shift space bar means just that. It means play from the beginning with a pre-roll. And in the Edit menu on Windows, in the Premiere Pro menu on Mac, Preferences, Playback, the default settings for pre-roll and post-roll are here. So it's 3 seconds. If that was 0, then it wouldn't go before the endpoint. It would play right at the endpoint. But when you don't have an endpoint selected, it actually goes to the beginning because it can't go before the beginning. So that's how it seems to play back. Now for the next one, I'm going to move down over here, and I have an extended keyboard in my Dell 7740. Of course, you can buy extended keyboards if you don't already have one for a computer. Both Mac and Windows have options for extended keyboards, and they have that extra number pad on the right that has things like home and enter. And keyboard design is all over the place. You might not have a number pad, but you might have a home key or a next key, and we can use those. So if I hit the home key, it jumps back to the beginning, or if I hit the end key, it jumps to the end. That's pretty good. It jumps to the beginning or the end of the timeline. Now, if you have a clip selected, hit Shift Home, it actually jumps to the beginning of that clip. That might be useful if you want to jump to a point here and I want to play it from there. So Shift Home Spacebar and it plays from there. Same thing with the end of a clip. So if I want to play from the end here, Shift End Spacebar and it plays because that clip is selected. If it's a lower clip, the same thing applies. Shift Home, Shift End, jumps between that clip. Very useful. What if I have more than one clip selected? So let's have these 3 selected. Shift Home, Shift End, Shift Home, Shift End. It's now jumping to the end of the selected clips. So no clip selected, timeline jump. Clip selected, the clip, it jumps. Multiple clips, it jumps between all of those. And you didn't have to learn extra keyboard shortcuts, just Shift Home and Shift End. Page up and down are useful too. Right now I'm zoomed all the way out on the timeline, which is the / key. I'm going to jump over here and hit the plus key several times and zoom in. Now, obviously I'm zoomed in so I can't see my whole timeline. And if I hit play, it's going to play until it gets to the end of that. and then it'll jump to the next page, the next area that will fill the timeline. But what you might not know is if you have a page up and page down, it's going to do the same thing. It's jumping between those areas. This just helps you to navigate the timeline instead of always zooming all the way out, moving the playhead, zooming all the way in. If you're used to the fact that you've got enough stuff on the timeline that 4 page up, page downs gets you through the whole program, maybe it's hey, I need to get to the third one. Down, 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 boom, you're right there, edit, oh, up, 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 and you're jumping around that way. So that helps. All right, let me zoom all the way out. And this one is definitely useful if you don't want to take your hands off of the keyboard and you want to select a clip. So my playhead is above these clips here, and I'm gonna tap the D key. And you'll see that it selected that clip. I'm gonna move to this clip and hit the D key. It's actually selecting this area here. And that's, you might ask, well, why didn't it select this? Well, that's because of these things over here, track targeting. By default, Premiere Pro turns these on for you and sometimes off for you. So if I select a different track targeting and now hit the D key, I'm selecting that. An interesting thing is if you don't have any track targeting on, then it's going to select the first thing on A1 and the first thing on V1. A lot of what Premiere Pro does is based on that there are certain rules like track targeting, depending on things like ripple deleting. It will ripple delete things like trim clips based on the track targeting. But if you have no track targeting, it will always go to the first track, the A1, V1, if you don't have any track targeting. So that's why if I have my track targeting set to V2 and I come over here and tap the D key, it's selecting only the stuff on V2 because that's the one I have selected. Well, what if I have V1 and V2 and now I go in the middle? Now it's selecting that one. Now it's selecting whatever is over when I do that. So when it's over an empty space, just V1, over V2, it's selecting both of these. And this is great for applying an effect, hitting delete, shift delete, ripple delete, things like that. Now there's another keyboard shortcut. Honestly, I don't know whether I would ever use this, but I came across this one by accident, which is Control up arrow, and that's select the beginning of the next or previous clip. So I'm holding Control on Windows, Command on Mac, up and down arrow, and it's jumping between that. And if I turn off V1, so track targeting has nothing to do with this. So selecting a clip has everything to do with it. So now with this clip on V2 selected, I'm now hitting the Control Command up arrow and it's selecting the beginning, going to the beginning of clip and select the clip, previous and next clip, up and down arrow. Maybe you want to do a little bit of trimming or something like that. So those are a few interesting keyboard shortcuts, some hidden, some you might be using. I want to show you one more keyboard shortcut that this is one of the things that Adobe enables it. Or they don't enable it, but they actually program it into Premiere Pro. So there are no keyboard shortcuts for this. Instead, I'm going to use a third-party tool called Excalibur. And I'll put a link to Excalibur. And I'm only adding this. This is a paid product, but if this is something you need, you use a lot, then Excalibur can be huge. I use Cubase as my music program, and I use this technique all the time. And that's move a clip to the playhead. It's actually in Premiere Pro, but Adobe doesn't put any keyboard shortcuts for it. So for Excalibur, it's an extension that you install, and it has all of these commands, and you can create custom commands, you can do macros and lots of things. So I'm gonna move my playhead here, I'm gonna select this clip, and I'm gonna invoke Excalibur and type MOVE, move selected clip to playhead, or move selected clip end to playhead. Boom, and it moved over. and Excalibur has got a ton of commands in there. And what Excalibur does is it uses the application programming interface that Adobe makes available to programmers, and it can show all these things that you can do that may or may not have controls already in Premiere Pro. That's why I love Excalibur. It does stuff I can't normally do in Premiere Pro. So there you go, some interesting keyboard shortcuts and one extra utility that you might want to use. Hey, if you're new to Video Revealed and you found this informative, take a moment and subscribe. Till next time, I'm Colin Smith, and it's my job to keep poking around inside Premiere Pro and just letting you know some things that might make working a little bit more efficient for you.